beautiful 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in, golf fans, to the preview for the second major championship of the 2024 season. My name is Joe Idoni. At Tour Picks is a place you can find me on Twitter. Welcome to the Golf Gambling Club. We're here to preview Valhalla Golf Club. I got a special guest that I'm going to bring up in just a few minutes. Super fired up for the second major of the year. Was just checking a little live from coverage on the TV over here, and I'm excited about this week. Before we get started, I got to mention that this podcast is brought to you in part from the good people over at Rotoballer. All of my content every week is up there. I post 4 articles weekly, 2 of which are up for free right now. Go check that out. The promo code, if you want to get involved, is LINES. That's LINES. In a nod to this podcast, that'll get you 10% off any PGA premium sub. Super fired up to talk PGA Championship. Cannot wait. There's some storylines that have come out today that I'm excited to talk to our guest about. I'm going to bring them up. Let's do it right now. Welcoming into the show, Barstool Sports golf writer, Netflix star, recently competed to compete in a PGA Tour event, in a qualifying event, Ryder Cup champion, one of the best pieces of content that we saw all year, and a dude who simply asks the best questions in the entire media room each and every week. Welcome to Preferred Lines, Dan Rapaport. How are you tonight?
I'm great. Got to Louisville today. A little red eye action last night from LA through Atlanta. That flight's only like 3 hours, so I'm a little bit delirious. But I'm excited. I'm excited for another major week, and it's nice to be in Kentucky. Last time I was here, I was a very drunk college kid at the Kentucky Derby, so haven't been back since.
Yeah, a little bourbon trail. Nothing wrong with that. I had myself a little nip before we went live here. You guys ran an event earlier today. How did everything go? Thank you for making time for being on the show tonight.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, we like to do this with majors. We have events. There's just a lot of golf people in the area. Some of our fans around. So we had a one-day thing at Woodhaven Country Club. Just a 2-man scramble. Really just drink and have a good time. So that's what we did. It was fun, and I'm excited to be jumping on with you and talking some golf now.
All right, so let's start here, Dan. Not sure. I know you were busy out on the course today, but some news broke late this afternoon. Jimmy Dunn has now resigned from the PGA Tour policy board. Rory has been denied re-entry onto that board. Who the hell is in charge right now? And are they, in fact, guiding this ship in a direction towards unification like we all were told they were doing?
That's a great question. Who is in charge? Cantlay, it seems like. Cantlay, Tiger, and Spieth seem to be kind of united. From what I gather, Webb and Adam Scott are a little bit more kind of in the middle. Look, Jimmy Dunn and Rory McIlroy are very, very close. And I think they were very aligned in what they saw was the path forward, which is we got to make this deal. And not only do we have to make this deal, we got to make this deal soon. Because if we don't, then Live Golf and the Saudis are going to continue to lure away our talent and weaken our tour. And that's when Jimmy appeared in front of the Senate in July of last year. That's what he said. He's like, we had to do this. If we didn't do it, then we saw what was going to happen. So, Jimmy makes this deal with Ed Hurley, who is still, I believe, on the policy board, but he's not on the negotiating committee. And they make this deal and the players freak out. They freak out. This happened behind our backs. We didn't know about this. They changed the board structure. So now it's majority players. So there's 6 players now. And only 5 independent directors, and they shut out Jimmy and Ed from the process. So if you're Yasser, right, you made this deal with these 2 guys who you built a relationship with, you made a deal with. They were the faces of the PGA Tour. 11 months later, it's a completely different group of people that are in the room. And I think the Saudis are like, if you guys want to make this deal, we'll make the deal, but if not, we'll just continue weakening your tour. And I don't know exactly what the sort of Cantlay faction thinks and believes, but I have heard some things that they are not guided by that same principle that we need to make this deal fast and we need to make this deal with the Saudis. I think a lot of them, and Spieth kind of hinted at this in the initial aftermath. He said, we got all this money from Strategic Sports Group. We got billions and billions of dollars. Maybe we don't need this deal. So there's it's not the most stable leadership I've ever seen in the world.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Rory basically said this exact same thing a week ago, and he sort of compared some of the things that happened in Ireland where people had their differences and they sort of put those to bed and they came together and made an agreement, and 20, 30 years later, no one's for the wiser, right? Here's what Jimmy Dunn wrote in his resignation letter that I found. I just pulled it up on my phone. Basically saying the same thing Rory said. It is crucial for the board to avoid letting yesterday's differences interfere with today's decisions. Basically what Rory said, and that seems like exactly what these three players are doing, is letting the decisions of yesterday interfere with today's decisions sort of moving forward. And I have reluctancy as someone who's far less in the know than you in letting Patrick Cantlay decide what's best for the sport of golf for the next 20 years. Here's the thing. I trust Rory is going to do what's best for the game long term. I don't have that same trust with Patrick Cantlay. Thank God that sort of Tiger is in the room, but now I'm hearing that not maybe him and Rory aren't fully aligned on this as well. And maybe the idea is to for the players with their new equity, and I've heard this sort of being thrown around there. The idea is for Tiger to basically buy up everyone's equity shares, and one day he owns the PGA Tour. Do you think this is becoming a reality? Do you think we're still on a path toward unification, or are we two ships going separate directions?
You're asking the right questions.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about Cantlay is when you ask him about this, what he says is, it is my responsibility to make a deal that works for the entirety of the membership. And I think you could argue that what Rory wants and what he sort of advocated for is a tour with 100 guys that play around the world. And there are a lot of guys who are rank and file PGA Tour players, or who have been playing, the Byron Nelson every year, and they've been playing the Phoenix Open every year. And the idea of, the top 60 guys or whatever it is, plus live guys, plus the idea of all those guys splitting off and doing their own tour probably isn't super attractive to them. Right? They don't. It's the problem with the membership organization. There's so many different mouths to feed, and everyone is motivated by something different. Like what a guy like Nate Lashley or a guy like, Lonto Griffin wants for the PGA Tour is very different than what a guy like Rory McIlroy wants for the PGA Tour. I mean, they named this negotiating committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
A Tiger's on, and it sounds like Rory is going to be on. So it seems like they are at least trying to negotiate. But if I'm just thinking of this from the Saudi standpoint, like they must be laughing. They're like, we made this deal, it got all this press, and then their house was lit on fire, and now it's a completely different group of people that are negotiating with them. So I would hope that we're moving toward reunification. I would really hope that is the case, but I'm discouraged by essentially Jimmy Dunn being like, I'm running up against a brick wall here, and I can't continue to do this anymore. So I hope so. I think all fans hope so. But again, the group of people who have been benefited most from this the last couple of years are the players. Patrick Cantlay and everybody other PGA Tour player are richer than they were before. Exactly. And they're playing for more money. And right now they're playing in the United States. Every signature event's in the United States. So for them, it's like, I don't know, it seems pretty good right now.
Yeah.
But they don't, but that's not what the fans are the big variable here, because this is all it's not going to continue to be built on a house of cards. If the money doesn't flow in to support these purses, there's going to be a bubble burst, because right now they're getting paid way too much. They're getting paid too much. And the whole world is drunk. Like I remember when the golf world is drunk, and when people are getting paid, I saw, and I understand football is different, salary cap, this, that, and the other. But one thing that stopped me in my tracks is I saw Travis Kelce sign for 2 years, $34 million, re-sign with the Chiefs. Tyrrell Hatton got way more money.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Something's off, right? Like there's something, it's a bubble. It's way overvalued right now.
Dude, Dan, all right. Maybe almost is a little bit of a stretch here, but you had a decent, legit chance to get into the Myrtle Beach Classic, Dan. Just say if you did, 11th place in Myrtle Beach cashed over 100K in an alternate event while there's a signature event going on. How is this sustainable? I realize that the majority of people that are on board and bought into this aren't probably necessarily concerned with like, how am I going to make my money? They just want to be part of professional golf. But it's now a for-profit business. You're paying alternate fields millions of dollars in a purse. Like the 40th place, like Kevin Kisner said it best, is going to pay the bills and more than pay the bills. And these players have completely overvalued themselves. And I think if you honestly ask most of them, they would probably like get a little bit of a laugh out of how much they are overvalued right now in comparison to athletes
Some of them
in
would.
other sports.
Some of them would. Some of them would, for sure.
Okay.
The Joel Daymans of the world understand what's going on. But there are some of these guys who feel like they're finally getting their fair share, and they felt underpaid before. And that's one of the things that I think Liv did was, with all the guys that went over there, is they convinced them that the PGA Tour was exploiting you for a lot of years. And they took your money, and you were treated terribly, and we're going to allow you to have your media rights and do this, that, or the other. And I think all of professional golfers right now, and then a guy who stays on the PGA Tour sees someone on Live getting $50 million who he's better than, and now he thinks he's worth $50 million when really that market was set by a sovereign wealth fund that has no profit motive. So it's all just a massive mess. And the hardest thing in sports to do, or in any business, is to start paying people less. That's really difficult to do. People don't take well to that. So they're going to have to. I mean, I'm very interested to see what Strategic Sports Group does with the PGA Tour, because $15 billion or whatever the valuation was that was a big valuation.
Huge.
They're not pumping that money in to keep things as is. So there's going to be changes to the tour eventually. I don't think it'll be in 2025 or maybe even 2026, but this thing has got to look different eventually. Otherwise, why did they spend all the money?
Yeah. It's interesting. All right, so let's kind of switch gears a little bit to the PGA Championship. You're there in Kentucky. The PGA, the last 6-7 years has, in my opinion, been the best major. It's kind of created an identity of its own, and it's encapsulated a little bit of what we used to think the US Open was, as being a very difficult challenge. But I love the places that they've gone to, Dan, when they go to Belle Reve, when they go to Rochester, when they go to Louisville, when they go to Kiowa, when they go to these places that aren't overly saturated with professional sports. And that way the community can really sort of rally behind and like kind of hold the event up. They've sold 200,000 tickets this week. I realize that the golf course has caught some strays from those with an eye on, sort of course architecture and stuff like that. But it's produced dramatic finishes. 2 of the 3 have gone to playoffs. Rory was insane down the stretch. I actually love this event. And what do you think of like sort of the identity has become of the PGA Championship since really Kerry Haig has kind of taken it under his wing?
Yeah, well, it's definitely gotten harder. Like the courses that they've gone to and the setups have been much more difficult. I mean, Oak Hill could have posted a US. I don't know if the winning score was 500, 600. I mean, he ended up winning by a couple, so it might have been more than that. But I think if Kiowa was also really difficult. It was like a 500 winning score. Bethpage Black,
right?
Always a beast. So they've gone to different parts of the country, and you're right. I mean, I think having it in places like Kiowa and places like Louisville, where you don't have to compete with 7 different NBA teams, it's gonna be very rowdy out there. So I'm excited. I think the move to May helped a lot because it opened up basically the entire country to have a tournament. Whereas if they've had PGAs at Valhalla in August, and they don't look fun. It looks very hot. And I think that's the case. That was the case with St. Louis, which was the last one before they moved to May. It was perfect. The weather was perfect at Kiowa. The weather was pretty good. I mean, it rained last year in Rochester, but it's not super hot this week, is what I'm getting at, and I like that. It's going to be 75 or 80 instead of it being 95 and humid all week. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And again, I think because of the way the PGA of America chose to go about it, inviting basically all of the live golf players. This is the strongest field we've seen this year. It's it's not just the Masters where you have the live guys who have won, and Joaquin Niemann, but they invited Dean Burmester, and they invited Puig, and they invited Moronk, and they invited Niemann, and they invited Gooch.
Gooch.
Yeah, and Gooch. So I'm excited to watch. I feel like
Yeah.
It's all the best players are back together again, and that
Right.
just doesn't happen very often anymore.
What was interesting that I thought is it's the first real major that's been willing to invite players based solely on their merits and accomplishments on Live Golf, like Burmeister and Gooch especially. Like even the Masters could kind of say, Neiman played in some of those Asian Tour events and DP World Tour events where they could have said, he's worked his way, he's competed his way to be eligible for an invitation. But this is really the first one that's kind of embraced it as one of the top leagues in the world. And if you're playing well enough on Live, it seems like the world golf points don't matter anymore. Like, right. So they've sort of become obsolete when you can get yourself into these championships. Now I realize this is sort of the biggest field, but it was refreshing to see those guys get in. And I have my certain opinions about Gooch and the way that he went about it, but I definitely think he deserved a spot.
Yeah, they've played kind of down the middle as much as you can. Like Brooks was on the Ryder Cup team, which wouldn't happen with the President's Cup. Even I know it's PGA of America and DP World Tour co-own the Ryder Cup, but they've said that Rahm is still eligible, Hatton is still eligible. So you're seeing the majors, they have no loyalty to. I mean, they have some loyalty and relationship with the PGA Tour, but all of these majors are not run by the PGA Tour, and each of these events is massively important for funding their entire operation. And so, for Augusta National, for the USGA, for the RNA, for the PGA of America, they're not gonna compromise their tournaments because of what's going on with the two tours. So I think it was definitely a decision that they made. And you're right. I mean, Taylor Gooch has played like one or two events outside of Live since he went. And Burmeister, a lot of these guys. You're right. They're clearly getting invites for what they've done on Live, and this is how they can sort of get around the world ranking problem. Is at the end of the day, they can invite who they want to invite. It's their tournaments. It's not like they make the rules. And Augusta said that too. They said if the world rankings don't change, we're an invitational. If there's someone that we feel like deserves to be here who's not otherwise qualified, we will just simply invite them.
Right. Some notes that I have on Valhalla. I'm going to read through real quick. By all means, if you have anything to add, I know you're getting to the course tomorrow, but it's just going to be a massive build out. It is a huge property, and that's part of the reason why they're hosting it here. Kerry Hegg said it will be maybe the biggest build out that they've ever had, close to 1 million square feet of structures. It's a Jack Nicklaus, obviously designed golf course. So I think that's why they kind of give it the major, and it's gotten its fourth time. Only Oak Hill has hosted the second most PGA championships behind Valhalla now. And then it's sort of a nod to Jack, in my opinion. 96, 2000, 2014. Like you mentioned, they were all held in August in the summer heat. While an earlier season event isn't unheard of at Valhalla, the 2004 PGA Championship was played in June. The senior PGA was played in May. And the big change this year is really the added length, over 7,600 yards now. They added, I believe, 5 new tee boxes. They pushed back the first hole. They pushed back a par 3 to like 250, but they've switched the grass, right? So now the fairways and tee boxes are this zoysia grass. And what I know about zoysia from sort of my readings is it's a late blooming grass, so it's going to be firmer. It's not necessarily in growing season in May, but that's the one variable. And even Kerry Hegg spoke about it at Valhalla from the 2 years that they last hosted. Now the zoysia's here. They expect it to play firmer and faster. I mentioned those added tee boxes. I think any major championship comes a lot down to the driver. You're going to see big boys. You need to be an athlete. You need to be strong. You need to gouge it out of the rough. The rough is up to 4 inches this week, which is well up from sort of where Oak Hill was. And the fairways are just tiny, Dan. 23 total acres of fairway on the GCSA sheet. That's the smallest amount of acreage on fairways that I've seen since 2019 at Pebble Beach. This is 7,600 yards and only 23 acres of fairway on the entire course. I don't necessarily know that I lean bomb and gouge, but I think if you are hyper elite in either driving accuracy or length, it favors you. You have to be one of the two. If you fall in the middle of both of those categories, I think that you end up getting sort of lapped on this type of golf course. Not a lot of around the green. Unlike Augusta and probably what we're going to see at Pinehurst, where around the green will really matter on those tightly, shortly mown areas with these undulating greens, It's kind of just like chip it out of the thick rough. And it just brings, not that it's not difficult, it brings more randomness into play and less skill, in my opinion, than the really tight, shortly mown areas. But major championship, look for your big boys, look for your athletes, look for your guys who are going to be able to gouge it out of the rough and hit greens in regulation and play smart, calculated golf. That's sort of my breakdown. You got anything there?
No, I think that's right. I think it's a big, big boy ballpark. Brooks, Bryson, these guys who hit it a long way and can carry it really far. I mean, if it is going to be firm and the fairways are that narrow, the comp that comes to mind was Winged Foot, where the fairways were so hard to hit because they were so narrow and it was so firm that everyone missed them. And then at that point, it just became who could carry it the furthest and who was strongest from the rough. So my pick actually this week is Jon Rahm, which I think is kind of a hot pick. Like
I saw it. Tell me about it.
Well, I just think, listen, I'm not going to pick Scotty every single time. I picked him at the Masters. He won the tournament. We're 1-for-1. I think Scotty is too good of a guy to not have been with his wife throughout this entire last week. Like, I'm sure she seems like an angel. I'm sure she was like, yeah, go play golf, go do your thing. Like, we'll be here. But he's so nice that I'm sure he insisted on being with her throughout the whole thing. And I just think Rahm, look, he had one. He played bad at the Masters, right? He's been in the top 10 in basically every live event, which I think no one pays attention to. Unless you win a live event, no one has any idea what happened below, whoever won the tournament. So he's been playing fine, playing solid on live. And I think he's got a ton to prove because I think since he left, he's seen Scotty blossom into the Scotty that we know now. And I think it's killing him that he can't compete with him on a week-to-week basis.
Yes.
And I think after putting up a stinker in the Masters, the last thing you want to do after going to live golf and having the best year of your career, getting to number 1 in the world, winning the Masters, is finish like T40 in the Masters and then T38 in the PGA Championship. I think he is like going to be so single-minded and so focused on playing good this week. And he's Jon Rahm. Yeah. Last year he was the Scotty before Scotty, became Scotty this year. So I just think at 14-1 or whatever it is, it's great value and it gets people talking, which is not necessarily a negative.
Yeah, look, I'm bringing up the odds board now. There are some 20s floating around there in different books, which is outrageous. Yeah. I've got like 6 guys that I think that hold almost all of the win equity this week. Could something random happen like it does at the PGA, of course, but Rahm is absolutely one of those guys. I thought that I think you opened up the Masters media session with him and asked him a great question, and his answer was something along the lines of I think my move. He thought that this was going to be a spur in terms of unifying the game.
It would be a done deal by now. And they said even after he went, they made an announcement being by the Masters. We hope to have a deal by the Masters. The Masters came and went. Nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened. I think he's a good pick. I think he's a sleeper pick. Loves sort of Nicklaus Designs. Obviously, the two wins at Memorial, the one he got coveted out of there. But I think it's a good get-right spot for him. You mentioned I don't think he throws up 2 duds in a row. But I wonder, here's my question about Rahm. There's certain guy, I don't know, it's probably too soon to tell, right? But I don't know what a 9th place is worth on live. I can kind of quantify what a win is worth. Okay, you took down Cam and these other guys at the top. I just don't know what a T9 is really worth there. And it's yet to be seen if live is going to work for someone like Jon Rahm, someone who needs to be hyper competitive and necessarily, I'm not saying he's not self-motivated, but he's driven by competing against Scotty, competing against Rory, these guys. The one guy that I think you can unequivocally say that live has worked for is Brooks. I mean, 4 live wins. It hasn't seemed to diminish his ability to play in major championships at all. If anything, it's maybe strengthened his chances because he is self-motivated. It's all about him and his inner circle in preparing for these majors. He's one of those guys that isn't afraid to sit there and tell you how important a major is. Some of the guys will shy away from it. He'll tell you exactly what it means to him and how important it is. 14 top 5s and 38 career majors. It's absolutely unreal. Even back in 2014 when he played here, I looked then and he shot 130. Yeah, and he shot 133 on the weekend, second best in the entire field, and he was nothing. Bell Reeve, Bethpage, Oak Hill, this is kind of in that mold for me. Bell Reeve with the Zoysia. Tight fairways, big rough. It's Brooks Koepka, and he's coming in off a win, which in each of his PGA Championship wins, he's coming with a top 5 in the week prior. whatever it's worth in Singapore, a trophy's a trophy, and that can continue to help him sort of build his confidence. I got 16-1. That's my favorite pick at the top. What about Scotty? Are you sort of, obviously we all know he can win. His accolades are unquestionable at this point, but from a betting perspective, and I know you're not too deep in the weeds here, but is 4-1, do you think even a good valuable bet on this guy at this time? Because everything that I know from golf betting for the last 20 years tells me don't make that bet, but he's kind of changing things and reworking my brain a little bit.
It's just a variable. There haven't been any variables with Scotty over the last month and a half or 2 months, whatever it was, since he's been winning every tournament. Like, it's just been, he's going to show up and he's going to shoot 68 the first. I just don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah.
It's very possible that he shoots 68 on Thursday. And it's like, well, the baby made no difference, but it's also possible that, he plays a little bit looser than he had. I just, again, I'll know a little bit more, I think, after hearing him speak and kind of talking about, what the last few days have been like. When was the baby born? Like what, but I would, this is the 1 week where I wouldn't, just because I feel like like what I said before, he's just too good of a guy. He's too good of a guy to have been preparing for this the way he's been preparing for everything else. But I'm excited though. I mean, look, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw him win when he was the favorite, number one in the world. All the eyes were on him. There's no reason he can't do it again. And if he does it again, then we start to have some really, really interesting conversations.
Very interesting questions. Another one that comes up, and obviously a name at the top. A couple of weeks ago, he won the Zurich in a team event. And I said, this does not matter at all.
Yeah.
Maybe I was wrong there, because maybe it did matter. Now we're at 2 in a row. He seems motivated by potentially being snubbed from the policy. But like he fires himself up in these situations. Like, I think that really pissed him off that they wouldn't let him back on. Just like he won the Canadian Open when Greg Norman pissed him off. Just like he fired himself up for the Ryder Cup. I'm talking about Rory. Obviously won here. And when I watched 2014, I just saw ruthless Rory. Like, that's all that comes to mind. Aggression, moxie, guts, like piping drives up Phil's ass to get it in under the thing, like thunderous fist pumps. This sort of I don't give a fuck attitude that he had, I love to see, and I think it really brought the best out of him. Going on his 61st major this year, it's been 10 years of a drought. There couldn't be possibly much more things going in the right direction for him at this point. What do you think of his chances sort of this week?
I think he's trying to convince himself it's going to happen. I think about what he said before majors in the past. I'm working on my game. I'm trying to get things right. He said after he won yesterday at Quail Hollow, it feels like the stars are aligning, which I thought was a very interesting quote. Rory's very into energy and meditation, and I think he's trying to put himself in that sort of mindset of like, this is happening. So where it's not a surprise, it's not a hope, it's just this is the expectation. If he wasn't Rory McIlroy, you would say he's like the favorite. He won here last time it was there. He's won his last 2 events. He's driving the ball unbelievably well. He putted great last week, but it is Rory McIlroy, and I'm too scarred from all these major near misses to go near him. But I do think it's very interesting the way he's kind of carrying himself and the way he's talking this week. It almost feels like something inside him has more genuine belief that he's going to get the job done this week than he has in any of the majors I can remember in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely seems motivated. The last guy before we leave, sort of the top of the board. I was standing there next to our boy CP when he was talking to Xander after the players. And like, I was actually really impressed with Xander because he basically took it and he was like, you know what? I'm going to beat myself up about it tonight, but tomorrow's another day. I've got things headed in the right direction. But this monkey on his back is a freaking gorilla now. Like, it's maddening to like sort of watch this guy. My guy, the Model Maniac, had last 100 rounds strokes gained leaders on all tours. And Scheffler's number 1. He's got 5 wins. Xander's number 2. He's got 0 wins. Rory's number 3. He's got 4 wins. What's happening right now? Like, how can you possibly stare at him at 14-1 and look at Brooks and look at Rahm right behind him at a higher price? And is anyone making that bet? And are they simply just crazy? Like, is he feeling this pressure?
According to Data Golf, he's the second best golfer in the world. It's like, it's so hard because we think so much about wins, but I'm looking at his page right now and he's just in the top 10 every single time he tees it up. I guess what they're thinking is, eventually it has to happen almost by accident. But you're right. I mean, was anyone going to catch Rory yesterday? Probably not. But let's not forget that Xander was tied for the lead with 8 holes to go, and he played those 8 holes in 2 over par. So is that my food delivery? 1 second.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. Thank you so much.
I wrote an article.
I love that food delivery. But no, what I was saying was like Rory was not going to be beat yesterday, but also Xander blew it and didn't play nearly good enough. Pin number is, sorry about this, guys. You're seeing
just mute it. I wrote a piece on Xander at it was like 3:45. It was right after the 8th hole. I was publishing power rankings piece for the PGA Championship, and he was just hit eagle that hole, went up 2 on Rory. And by the time that thing literally went live 90 minutes later, he was down a touchdown to McIlroy. Like, it happened in the drop of a hat, but he's tentative. Like, you can't say he's not. He's tentative on his shots. He doesn't commit. We know he can hit them, and he leaves putts short, which drives me crazy on Sundays on almost every green. It's maddening.
Yeah, he takes a long time, and I think like the best players, I'm thinking of the guys who close. I mean, Brooks and even Rory yesterday, like when they're firing, when they're in attack mode, they seem to be playing really quickly, playing really aggressively. It just doesn't quite feel like Xander's able to get to that. He's kind of a methodical player by nature, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And I just wonder if at this point, like, as you mentioned, it's got to be on his mind. He knows it. And he said that, second places, third places don't really do it for him anymore. And he's racking up a lot of them. So the stats are going to love him because he's consistent there every single week. But I don't think he's a guy you want to have money on right now. He just hasn't proven that he can do it.
Yeah. I want to move down just a little bit in the board. I bet Bryson this week. You think this is a good golf course for him?
I do. Yeah, it's big. I just liked the way he looked and sounded at the Masters. He seems like a completely different person. Like, he was one of the crowd favorites. He's clearly
reinvented himself like 4 times.
He's reinvented himself. He's kind of, I think it's like he's quirky. He's kind of a lovable character, whereas before it was everyone had a problem. The 3D printed irons. YouTube he's doing a lot of YouTube stuff. I think he's kind of embraced himself. I think he's self-actualized a little bit. He's going to get another one at some point. I really do believe that, just how far and how straight he drives the ball. And, maybe it's like, it doesn't require the sort of artful touch that Augusta does around the greens, which is where I think he can kind of struggle. I do think it's a good golf course for him. Absolutely.
Yeah, number 1 off the tee on long golf courses, number 1 ball speed guy on tour, which is something that I've kind of been looking into. The other 2 names sort of in this middle range, I just wanted to ask if you had a take on either one. They're very different players. One is Wyndham Clark. If Bryson is here, when I was at the Players, they got the thing up on the driving range where they're like, they track player shots all week. Longest drive, highest ball speed, biggest carry, everything was Wyndham Clark that week. He can just, I wonder if this is a place where he can just kind of swing away like he did at Quail. Like when he won at Quail, I think he hit 38% of fairways that week. Like, it doesn't matter when he's hitting it that far. Obviously, he had the ability to fan a couple at LACC and was fine with those as well. But Wyndham Clark is sort of intriguing to me. And the other guy that makes no sense, but I just can't ignore him because he doesn't fit any statistical mold that you look at, but he's the mold breaker, and it's Cameron Smith. I've seen it up to 50-1 since 2022. So the last 2 years in one major. He's played in 9 majors and 1 Players Championship, 10 total events, 6 top 10s, 5 top 6 or better, 2 wins. Also won the Players in there. He's gained 87 strokes on the field in those 10 events, which is the second best of any player. And these are in the best fields in golf. When he doesn't hit it long, he doesn't hit it straight, but the dude just finds a way. And at 50-1, it's hard for me to imagine like he doesn't sneak at some point into the top 10. And when he's in the top 10 and you got to bet on him 50-1, you feel like this guy's freaking live, because anytime it's 15 feet, you want it to go in. And it actually, for once, it's one of those players that I bet on, and I have 15 feet and I actually get to watch it go in.
Yeah, I'm going to rewind to what you said at the beginning, where you got to either be long or straight off the tee, and he's neither.
Yeah.
So I understand he's a big name, and he's an unbelievable short game, and he's got a great track record. I don't think it's the best golf course for him. The other guy you mentioned was who?
Wyndham.
He's so hard to predict.
Yeah, he
Like, and
is.
I think that's why data golf is so he's number 4 in the world in the official world golf rankings. He's number 15 in the data golf ranking. Because, like, if we go back to Pebble Beach, so he wins at Pebble Beach, he finishes T41 at the Phoenix Open. He missed the cut at Riviera, which was hard to do. Then he finishes second at the Bay Hill, second at the Players. Then he goes T31 in Houston, misses the cut at the Masters. The next week after missing the cut at the Masters, he's T3 at RBC Heritage. And then last week he shot 7 over par for the week.
Right.
I don't know which way is up with this guy. It feels
Yeah.
like, he's going to swing away with no matter what. And if he drives it straight, he's obviously proven that he can contend in big events, but he's also proven that he can miss the cut in big events. So he's just a giant question mark. But at those odds, 45, what is it? 45 to 1, 40 to 1.
Yeah, 45.
I like that as a long shot, kind of better than Cam.
Cantlay, anything on Cantlay? Like, just obviously off this year, but you look at the Nicholas ties with, what was it, Sherwood out there in California, and then obviously a couple at Memorial, one at Caves Valley too, which is similar agronomically to this place, and then sort of the Midwest there. It seems like a big number on Patrick, or is there anyone else in this range that you've kind of got your eye on?
Looking at the range that you're looking at, I like Tommy better than Patrick this week. It's going to happen for Tommy. It really is. He's going to hit it so good one week that he can't lose. Cantley's dealing with a ton of noise, a lot of noise, and he's very good at not paying attention to things. But he's dealing with so much noise now that he almost it has to have sort of permeated the layer that he's tried to create between himself and everybody else. Like, he is in the midst of it right now, and if these negotiations are going on, like, he's got a lot on his plate. So I kind of like Tommy in that range more than I like Cantlay. I really do think that Fleetwood, if you look at he's been awesome in the majors because it's about hitting fairways and hitting it straight. And that guy hits it straight. I think he's going to make a run this week. I do. He's kind of one of my.
Have you heard any good news or timetable on your boy Finno?
He's not coming back this week. I know that. He's got who does he have on? He's got this guy Clarkey on the bag who caddies for Poulter on Live. So it's been kind of a rotating cast. But Finno, I mean, I don't know if you saw, but the scar, he had open heart surgery. The scar was out of control, so I don't know when he's going to be back. But
I saw him at Sawgrass, and he was struggling at that point. Yeah, you could he was caught, like he was keeled over on the range, and something was up. I just thought he was sick, but obviously it was something more. All the best to him, of course. As we sort of move down, like, it's the major that's probably the most wide open historically in terms of guys who are a long shot having capabilities to win. You've got a big number on Justin Thomas. You've got a big number on Spieth looking for a grand slam. Spieth is up to 80 to 1 in some spots. Hideki concerns there with a little bit of injury, but sets up great. Like, there's few people.
Hideki at 70 to 1 I like, because
Me too.
His injury stuff is like, it feels like he's always injured and then he comes back and plays great. Like, it doesn't seem like it lingers. It seems like he misses a tournament and then he comes back and he's okay. Let's not forget how good he was playing at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and the injury stuff at golf is starting to feel like load management stuff in the NBA a little bit to me, with like Zalatoris in Houston and Wyndham before that, and then you get Hideki and you get Aberg last week with the knee. It's starting to feel like I just need a week off more than it is like an actual injury. And you don't know with Hideki. And the thing with, like, I was thinking about this when I was watching Rory go like super nuclear last week on Sunday, as I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, like, there are a few guys who can just torch an entire field and like beat everyone's shooting even par. I'm shooting 8 under. Like, there's a handful of guys, and Hideki's weirdly one of those guys that just, when they go nuclear, they're going to just birdie holes while everyone else is just sitting there standing still, and he's going to lap everyone.
Yeah, he can get incredibly like on autopilot with the iron play. I think about that 62 at Riviera where he was just knocking everything down. His short game stats are so good this year, which I was very surprised about. He's like leading the tour, I think, in strokes gained around the green, and that's obviously kind of a funny stat, not super important. But I think we don't think of him that way. We think of him as sort of an inartful player who paints by numbers, but in reality, he's got a hell of a short game. I like that at 70 to 1. If you can get 70 to 1 on Hideki, I think those are odds you can't not take. Sam Burns too played well last week.
Yep,
starting to show some signs.
Exactly. I like Sam Burns. I just like the athlete mold of him. I like the fact that he's got enough PGA Tour wins under his belt that while he hasn't done it in a major, I think he can draw a little bit of confidence from winning events like the match play. Winning, being there and winning tournaments is important, especially particularly in major championships. And I think he's got a little bit of that pedigree. I saw some numbers up there around 100-1 earlier. Zalatoris is a big number. Like, is Spieth going to win another major, you think?
Not this week. No.
Okay.
I think he is hitting it way too all over the place. I mean, you said like this is you've got to be in control of your ball here. Augusta will always give him the opportunity to sort of shape shots around, but he's actually missed the cut in 2 of the last 3 there. I think this is kind of as low as he's been. Like there's not a lot of reason for optimism right now. But I said the same thing before Bethpage Black, and he somehow finished like T3.
I know.
So it's
third, yeah.
Who knows?
This policy board might just like be blowing people up, like just plummeting their careers. When you look at what it did when you look at what it did to Rory last year, like it ruined him. I don't know why he wanted to get back on there. Last guy I want to ask you about, and just expectation level point is Tiger Woods. Got the win here. It's just great to see him back. He did not obviously play since Augusta National, where it was, a hit and miss. Do you think this is a golf course? Like, I think there's very few left in major championship wise that will be able to suit him. And the run is almost coming to an end. Do you think he can compete, make a cut this week, maybe top 40?
I mean, he's Tiger Woods. He could make a cut based, with just his right hand, maybe. But no, I don't think. I mean, I don't think that there's any. These kind of golf courses, almost like U.S. Open setups, have not been his friend in the last couple of years. He's finished 72 holes, I think, like 3 or 4 times since the accident. 82-77 over the weekend at Augusta National. Hasn't played since. If there's anybody who can do it, and I've said this a million times, it's Tiger Woods, but I don't think PGA Champ. I think it's going to be a Masters or a U.S. Open or a Masters or a British Open if he ever. Yeah. Like it just doesn't seem like these big athlete court. I mean, he was the athlete, but now he can hardly walk, and so the athlete mold doesn't really work out. Just doesn't seem like a golf course that a 48-year-old guy with a limp could win on.
I know. I hear you, man. I'll be rooting for him as always. Got the shirt on tonight.
Of course, he's Tiger Woods. I mean, we want him around as long as possible. It's great he's playing. You asked me the question. I have to give the answer is depressing.
And I agree with the answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see what else. What else you got coming up this week, content wise? I know you're going to be on site tomorrow, probably firing off some good questions. Does it bug you in the media room when you hear guys ask terrible questions?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. The Rom one really bothered me because you started off with such a good question. I'm like, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, look, I know I don't have the experience. I know I'd be nervous as shit, but I also know that John Rahm's coming in. He's defending champion, and I've got like 6 months to prepare a decent question for him. And it bothers me a little bit to hear some of the guys.
Yeah, the one that bothers me the most is like when you can tell that a guy is like has a narrative in his head that he's going to write about or whatever. And he's basically just trying to get a quote to fill this little like area in his story that he's left for this quote. So they'll be like, that up and down on 17, did you feel like that kind of, maybe gave you some momentum going into 18? It's like, you're just giving the answer. You're just telling him what you want him to say. So especially with major weeks, sometimes not as much here, but at the Masters, guys who don't cover golf on a week-to-week basis are there and they ask a bunch of questions that we've all been asking all year. But we're getting very inside baseball here. It's good to be at another major. I'll put it that way.
It's good to be there, man. Thank you for joining me on the show tonight. I know you got some food waiting. It's been a long day for you, so I appreciate you making time. All the best to you this week. Make sure everyone go follow Dan Rapaport. I know you are, but just do it anyways. Thank you for joining me on the show, Dan. Best of luck this week. Have a great night. We'll talk soon, bud.
Thanks for having me. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
All right, later, dude. All right, good to talk to Dan. I appreciate him. They had an event today that they ran basically since 1 p.m., so he came straight from the course to join the show tonight. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you enjoy the PGA Championship show. I've got some long shots for you. They'll be out in the video that I'm producing for Rotoballer tomorrow. I'll have at least 3 picks in the 50 to 1 plus range that I've got lined up for this week. Like I mentioned, it's Brooks, it's Bryson, it's Wyndham, it's Cam Smith. I think my card's full. 50 to 1, 40 to 1, Bryson 28, Brooks 16. I got a little action on a couple of parlays with Brooks and the P's going on that me and my boy Luke got. So those are my picks this week. We did actually, you know what? I might have skipped over Ludwig. I was so high on him last week, Ryan. I apologize for skipping over him. Like I mentioned, I'm not concerned about the knee. I would like to hear him talk and just reiterate that a little bit this week. I wanted him at the Wells Fargo. I think that the number right there next to Brooks and Rahm, I would probably rather take either of those two guys. The way the fairways are so narrow, and I think that a lot of guys are able to successfully deploy bomb and gouge. Maybe that somewhat mitigates his biggest strength, which is his ability to hit it long and straight, which is never completely mitigated, Ryan. But I think this week it opens it up to guys who maybe spray it a little bit more because everyone's going to ultimately miss fairways. I worry about the preparation a little bit, even if the injury is not real, maybe just lessening up his practice time. Could lead to a little bit of unsustainability. It's just you got to get out hot, especially at PGA Championships. You got to be 2-3 under the first day. I think 12 to 15 probably is your winning score this week. Best of luck to everyone on your betting cards. Make sure to give this show a thumbs up and maybe share it with a friend this week. These major weeks are really big and important to anyone who's out there grinding out golf content each and every week. My name is Tour Picks. That's where you can find my name on Twitter. It's Joe Idoni in real life. Thank you all. I appreciate you. I'm going to catch you soon. Thanks for checking out Preferred Lines. I'm out of here. Peace.